Good evening, gentlemen. I want you to know that this podcast you're about to watch has been censored. We've received a strike on YouTube. We've had to remove a lot of parts, and we've had to add a lot of bleeps. Because honestly, we've received a strike and they took it down. In about 40 minutes, in the podcast, we talked about the symbolism of 22 and they took it down at 22 o'clock coincidence. I'm just saying I'm with you guys. I wouldn't miss it because obviously the platform has forced me to take a lot of precautions to try to upload it again. Let's hope it stays here for a long time, and I hope you can enjoy it before it gets censored. A big hug, Elf.
Ex-President of the United States. I have a video where you can clearly hear the girl say she turns him on. I have it firsthand. The parents beside her hear it and laugh about it. Before or later, notice how many actors have such big noses that you can clearly see where it comes from.
When the Paramount Pictures logo appears at the beginning of the movie, there are 22 stars. The number 22 appears repeatedly, always within the script. How many pearls are on this necklace? Suddenly 22 fall off?
We can discuss Sam Smith, Billie Eilish, and other artists. You can even see a change in the aesthetics before and after. They went from being good artists who had good numbers to being world-famous artists. Before they were normal people. And by selling themselves to these entities, they are reflected with absolute vulgarity, hypersexualization, singing about family men, having sex in clubs with transsexuals.
That the world elites are not really Jewish, they are Erfras. This is very important. Translated into Spanish from the Torah, but in the Spanish Bible they translate it as giants. If you read it literally, you think they are giant men of 316 feet, but the Kabbalistic view is that giants are Nephilim, and Nephilim means
Hello everyone, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of LA Factoria. This show is extremely special because we have two of the guests who have brought us the most out of the ordinary information to this channel. Today we have the great Enrique from Exponiendo la Verdad and the great professor of the Torah and Kabbalah, Raul Durán.
How are you? Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here as always.
Thank you from the bottom of my heart, brother. It's a pleasure, yes sir. And with my dear brother Raul.
it's a pleasure to be here, especially with my brother Enrique, whom I've known for a long time. And with you, of course, I'm delighted, so I'm feeling absolutely great.
Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, we have several topics to discuss today, including ones I've covered with Raul about the Torah and Hebrew. How does this relate to your expertise in negative priming? And how are the things that Raul is going to tell us validated through movies? The first topic we had to talk about was the 22 Hebrew letters.
Yes, the 22 Hebrew letters are seen in Kabbalah as the basic building blocks of creation. Saying it in a way that everyone can understand, now in contemporary language. They're like the 22 programming codes of this video game we live in. In other words, the Kabbalists claim that we live inside a reality that can be changed, that we can create, that we can modify. And in that sense, they study the particularity of the 22 Hebrew letters in order to do this. What happens? Well, the 22 Hebrew letters, each one of them are the souls of the planets and stars. That is of the astral system. In other words, what is known as the astral system. Actually, it's a kind of cosmic software that projects events in the earthly world in what is called the Kabbalah Malshut. And what if you do nothing? The events of your life are events on autopilot. That is, they have to do with what is called Murphy's Law. That is, if something can go wrong, it will go wrong. And if something, it's going to be difficult, well, it's going to be very difficult. And what the Kabbalists teach is to somehow soften all of that. Kabbalah contains the word kal, meaning light or easy, suggesting that Kabbalah makes life easier and lighter. And therefore, what is intended with the knowledge of the 22 of Trasabrea and its combinations? When meditated on and contemplated, they help soften the harsh and severe events we face in this physical plane. There is a very important archetype within Kabbalah called the Tree of Life. The audience has probably heard it mentioned. And the Tree of Life is nothing other than the soul. It's that simple. The Tree of Life is a code that refers to the soul. In the Tree of Life, there are 10 Sephirot, or 10 dimensions, and each of those dimensions is associated with a Hebrew letter. And in addition, there are paths that connect each of those dimensions. There are 22 paths, each corresponding to a Hebrew letter. Every path teaches something, like a kind of initiatory path, like a series of concrete trials that one can choose to undertake or overcome. And all of that is perfectly coded. The 22 Hebrew letters are essential. When people ask, Raul, where should I start studying Kabbalah? I point to them. I say, well, with the 22 Hebrew letters, because for me, that's the foundation. It's about understanding each of those 22 intelligences, each of those 22 vessels of divine intelligence, which in this world allow us to first understand reality and then to be able to modify it.
Enrique, regarding what Raul is saying here, does this get reflected to us through movies? Why are the 22 Hebrew letters important?
Yes, the thing is that when I met Raul, I didn't know all this information. As I kept inviting him to my channel, he kept telling me about the ancient texts. Of course, I was learning, and then, as I started analyzing the movies, I realized that what he was saying was being reflected. And it turns out that the thing about the 22 Hebrew letters as paths of life made perfect sense. It turns out that in the movies, to get you in, negative priming is sometimes symbolic. It shows up. Other times, it's directly in what would be the protagonist's speech. Or like that. It's all in the script. And other times, since they can't put the number or the symbolism in directly, what they do is fit it in at the exact minute so it matches. In this case, what we're seeing with the 22 paths of life is the bomb, because it's one of the tests. I'm going to give you a few examples so you can see for yourself. What happens in movies when they reach the 22nd minute or 1 hour and 22 minutes? Well, the main character chooses which path they're going to follow, chooses which way of life they're going to take. So we already know the relationship that the Jews and honey would have in the end, and so on and all that, and that's how we all know it. Thank you, but
Some people still don't know it, but
each
more and more. They're going to end up knowing, huh? They're going to end up knowing. Yes.
sooner or later, honestly, how many actors have a nose that noticeable? Where do they come from? Is that right? Uncle Adam, Sandler, all of these? Well, the thing is... Oh, I didn't expect to be so honest, but you have to be, Uncle. Things are what they are. When it comes to the 22 paths, the paths of life, we see it. For example, I'll use the movie Soul, which is excellent. And they explain the reincarnation system to you, how souls choose their life story and what they want to learn before incarnating. And what they're going to be? Well, the only soul in that movie that resists being anything, meaning it doesn't want to incarnate because it doesn't want to choose any of the possible lives. None of the life paths is literally called 22 Subscribe Isa, who is one of the main characters. So, of course, it fits perfectly with what Raul was saying. She's called 22 because she doesn't want to choose any. She wants all 22 paths, and since she doesn't choose any, she doesn't incarnate.
By not choosing, she essentially chooses them all.
Of course, and that's why she doesn't incarnate and stays there experiencing everything. And she says, it's not that I have all the possibilities here, but of course, if you incarnate, you have to choose one of those paths. The thing is that with our soulmates, we choose and study what we're going to do in this incarnation. And those 22 possible destinies are those paths that represent the 22 Hebrew letters. And what happens? Once you incarnate with your actions and what you choose, with your free will, you travel along one of those 22 timelines. What happens? That when I started watching all the movies, they did the same thing. Here's a couple more examples like that. One...
Question, what movies am I? Souls? The...
Movie? Exactly, yes.
I haven't seen it, I'm just saying it to take note. Well...
You won't see it, it's amazing. I'll give you another example later that's very famous. Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters is the first of all. Alright, at minute 22 33, exactly. It's when the main girl tells them that she doesn't believe in ghosts, and they, who are ghost hunters, start telling her why. They do exist and so on. And when they get to the ritual they're going to do with the girl to channel entities from another dimension, like the reptiles. And that's when the pyramid, the eye, and everything appear, huh? So they open the interdimensional portal, and what happens? It's on the 22nd floor specifically. So they're putting it on the floor or in the minute for you. Here's another key example, the movie A Clockwork Orange. At minute 22, the main character approaches the professor and says, "Change your life or you'll end up badly." He says this at minute 22. At 1 hour and 22 minutes, he still hasn't changed and acts badly. The main character ends up going to get mind control. He goes on stage at 1 hour and 22 minutes, and they're controlling him mentally using conditioning, and they show all the doctors how it works. And he's completely conditioned, and again, they're leading him down another path in life, controlling him. Look, I'll give you another example. For example, the movie Divergent, which is very explicit, because in Divergent, the main characters have to choose which path in life they're going to take. There are 5 possibilities: erudition, dauntless, and so on. Well, it's right at minute 22 when the girl decides, what will it be? And she runs and goes to that place. So in so many movies I saw it, that at minute 22 they decide their life path. I asked if it confirms what Raul explained to me, and if not, they just show you the 22 directly. For example, can I tell you the movie that was also a hit, Minority Report? 22 is a constant, we reach minute 22, and that's exactly when the balls appear. They predict what crime that person is going to commit, and they have a pre-crime unit. And with people who have a very developed pineal gland, they're able to see what will happen in the future. They arrest the person before the crime is committed. At the minute 22, the name of the person to be arrested appears along with what will happen to them. That is, the fate of that person appears at minute 22 and at 1 hour and 22 minutes. It's precisely when they're scanning his eye. Probably the main characters too, but that's not all. There's also a vote in that movie, a vote to see if the citizens support the pre-crime unit. It's also on the 22nd. So Dio, things are there to be seen if you know them, of course. Because I would never have seen all this negative priming if I hadn't had your information. There are...
An interesting thing, Enrique, if you allow me, which is that when the Paramount Pictures logo appears at the beginning of the movie, there are 22 stars. And 22 appears repeatedly. And you taught me that too? Inside the movies, always within the script. I don't know. How many pearls does this necklace have? Suddenly they tell you 22. At that moment, you have to pay close attention to the dialogue because it's constantly referring to what was just explained.
Exactly. And
the Hollywood industry itself, in my opinion, is also classified under that code as 22 because it provides different life options. Do you remember the video you made about the reptile series you watched as a kid? Oh, yes.
the one about dinosaurs, it's really good.
The one about dinosaurs? Does it have a dinosaur as the family father?
It is.
Like the...
Simpsons, but with dinosaurs. Yes, yes.
Panzon
He works...
as a laborer, right? Yes?
He used to break trees.
I recently discovered and watched this series as an adult, though I hadn't known about it before. I learned about it from Enrique and realized he was involved. The clip where the dinosaur dad or grandma, I'm not sure who, said there are only 4 or 5 stories that keep repeating, right?
He said that. Yes, yes, yes. He said it. Yes, yes.
It's interesting because there are 4 basic story algorithms and stories develop from them.
That's right. And repeat and repeat.
And repeat. One more thing, all stars, whether in Paramount Pictures or on national flags, have 5 points. They represent the human being. They represent the human soul. It means that the human soul is trapped inside a flag that is inside a Malford kingdom, inside a physical reality, and that the human soul has the possibility to dream because it is given to it. Hollywood is the dream factory, and then Paramount gives you 22 stars but 5 pointed ones.
To tell you, in my opinion, in negative priming, you can dream, but nothing more than dreaming, right?
But
A question. I understand the references Enrique makes to negative priming regarding certain things, which is a way of telling you what's going to happen, to get rid of bad karma when carrying out certain actions. What would be the intention behind negative priming when using, for example, 22 or 33? I don't really see the point of negative priming there. It's hard for me to see why would they tell you that.
it's complicated. You can explain or I'll just start.
Just a quick note. That makes sense, since Enrique will explain it better now. In the cognitive processes that the elites master perfectly, these cognitive processes make it so you can be programmed not to leave room for direct attention to certain codes that might make you ask questions that aren't convenient.
You wonder why you wake up?
They're trying to avoid awakening, but ironically, this is causing a massive awakening. This is interesting, because we're at the end of the video game in the era of Messias, so it's time to wake up. And everything Enrique has discovered, in my opinion, is brilliant, because I don't know anyone in Spanish who has done the work Enrique has done. I don't know anyone. And that's why it caught my attention. That's why I reached out to him and we got in touch. Well, he's going to explain it to you much better in terms of what that exactly means on a cognitive level.
And the thing is also, this goes deeper. I'm going to connect it with what you were saying earlier. For example, you said they included it in the dialogue, and I'm going to give a great example, which is the series they made of Brave New World. I don't know if you remember precisely, which is based on the book by
Aldous Huxley.
Exactly, that's right. In that series, it's great because they also reference 22 in the dialogue, and then what happens? That they don't let the people freely choose what destiny to have. They don't allow you to have your own partner. The main character is kept sedated with pills. Well, the main character wants to have a romance with a boy, and they want to keep it private for themselves. They don't want to share partners, so they're together. But what happens? The state watches them so closely that everything is recorded. And then the head of the society calls her and says, "Look, are you seeing this person romantically and not sharing love with everyone? You're doing whatever you want, and you know that's not how we work here." The girl defends herself, insisting, "No, it wasn't that many times." Then the evil man running Society 22 responds to her. It wasn't that many times, because she chose her destiny, she chose her possibilities. One of those, her
Path.
Exactly, but he wants to control those 22 paths, of course. Is that the reference? I'll explain clearly so you understand the difference between negative priming and the cognitive process. As I was telling you, Raul, and what you're talking about with karma, which is different? Even I have some doubts about whether that's entirely real. I'll explain and reason with you why. Negative priming, brother, is telling you the truth through dramatic or comedic arguments, to instill in your implicit memory a sense of rejection toward real information when he explains it to you. Alright, we need to address some basic points. We have two types of memory, implicit memory and explicit memory. Explicit memory refers to events you vividly remember, such as your first communion or wedding day. So, key things you recall are explicit memories, while implicit memory is emotional and you don't remember the event that caused it. That is, what they are really manipulating through the mass media are your feelings. Not what you're going to remember, but you'll remember a feeling of rejection. Okay, so why do they show you the 20-second always related to the path of life with those 22 possible paths of your life that we prepare before we incarnate? They do it so you don't know. This means that both destiny and free will exist, and that when we explain these truths to you, that feeling of rejection emerges in you, and you don't believe me. So, how many more times do they put reality right in front of your face? Dramatic or comedic arguments. It's even harder for you to accept what I say, because I instill that feeling of rejection in you. And don't you have the ability to reflect and say, well, I'm getting angry because I saw it in 10 movies before? No. That reflective capacity.
I understand. For instance, any movies related to topics of pandemics, all the movies that have to do with topics of zombies, of apocalypse, those movies that practically many of them even predicted certain circumstances that we were able to experience in real life. When we're told, hey, this could have been something planned. This could have been part of a mind control strategy, a strategy to try to hack the human genome. The powerful may have used this as a strategy for that purpose. I get that negative priming works that way. I saw a guy in a movie explain it, and that's exactly right.
Alright.
Movies cause rejection. My question is, what's more?
Deeper? It is
Deeper than that. Yes, it's more
deep. That's why you just stayed there, on the surface layer. Alright, that's what I've thought about. What you say about I saw it in a movie so I don't believe it, that's where you reflect on I saw it in a movie. Negative priming goes to your implicit memory. There's no reflection, there's feeling.
reaction.
Exactly. I hate you, want to insult you, and don't believe you. Why do you act this way and get angry?
I think there's Agent Smith, but that...
What's happening? Yours is reflexive, and what you said relates more to explicit memory. I saw it in a movie. I'll give you the exact case you're discussing with clear negative priming, okay? Let's use what you're saying as an example, okay? How did they create negative priming for us? Exactly what they intended when the lockdown happened, so we'd all accept the medication out of fear. I'll give you the exact movie. Contagion. In the movie Contagion, you all know it, it's the story they told you. Huh? Bat? In the end, the bat ends up falling where the pigs are, and the pig is fed to a person. That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
They only missed the pangolin.
But, alright, what's the best thing? When you see the scientists running the tests, do you see the medication that killed the monkeys and they give you a close-up? Is it medication 33 that kills the monkeys? Alright, I'll tell you, how did they use negative priming to their advantage? They already told you that medication 33 was the one that killed the monkeys. They told you to your face that the medication they were going to give you when they infected you was meant to negatively affect you. Either by killing you, like many died, or at the very least, making you sicker than you already are. Alright, how do they use it to use negative priming to their advantage? Then in the news, all the news they released was with the number 33. And that way they make sure that you... Another one, Fisher quotes me, saying that Pedro Sanchez said in August that there will be 33 million people medicated. They're using it so that when I release the news and tell everyone, realize that this is a lie. Are they using the negative priming of 33, like they did in the movie Contagion, to make you feel rejection when I tell you that they're lying to you? They are behind this. The number 33, the 33 levels of the Illuminati lodges organized all of this, and they're putting it right in your face. So you said, okay, Enrique, it was just one news story, not many more. When you look a year later, let's see. How many dead? Did they say on Antenna 3 that they had been exceeded a year after the medication was administered? They said the whole population. There is an excess of deaths. They gave 20 excuses for why it happened, and when you look at the number, it was 33,000 and something excess deaths. Why do they do it? Because when I bring you that news and tell you, hey brother, they're scamming you, it's always the same people behind this. Is that feeling of rejection going to emerge in you? They used the number 33 before in a movie to reveal the truth, you see? So, you don't believe me? Now that you've understood that concept, I'll move on to the two you mentioned. That is the most complex cognitive process there is. Negative priming in implicit memory as a feeling. Then there is... Let's put it this way, a reflective capacity on the part of the person which is explicit memory. And you remember that it was from a movie and you don't have it anymore because it seemed like that in The Simpsons? It's silly, but that's much more simplistic. It's much more reductionist. They don't do it for that reason, but for negative priming, which is much deeper. Then there's the next layer, which is what they say spiritually and so on. By putting the truth in front of you, what the Satanists say is that they actually get rid of their karma and so on. I have my doubts that this is the case, and I explain my reasoning so everyone can think whatever they want.
Huh?
I think it could explain a small percentage of the variability, but I don't think it's the whole thing. I believe it's mostly negative priming. Do you know why? Karma is ultimately the law that keeps positive and negative in balance. And it can be deceived. It's an energetic law, based on my knowledge and what I've learned. Huh? So no matter how much you want to put the truth in front of people, huh? If you generate negative priming and slow their learning, you harm them even if they're unaware. So it's going to affect you negatively and you'll have to pay for it with your karma, huh? That's my reasoning. Everyone can think whatever they want. I'm just saying that's my reasoning. And then I say, also remember this. And even if you put certain truths right in people's faces, it's like if someone puts a sign in front of me, you know, in Chinese, Enrique, if you don't answer me, now you have to pay me 100 euros, you know? And they put it on a sign in Chinese. I don't know Chinese, brother. Most people are unaware of cognitive manipulation or the extent of negative priming. So, how are you going to expect people to see the truth even if you put it right in front of them? If they don't even get what they're seeing, you know? It's like translating for them. So that's where I think it falls apart, about them getting rid of karma because they could get rid of a small percentage of karma, but I think most of it they would still have to pay.
Raul, not at all. I agree with Enrique. Warning about the harm doesn't erase their karma. I mean, one thing is that they warn about the harm they do because it's a cosmic law, because they have to do it, and another thing is that they're doing harm, and that's undeniable. It may seem paradoxical, but I think Enrique's explanation is very well thought out. I just wanted to add two things. We always have the potential for free will, but evil forces are always obligated to stop us from having it. The cognitive processes that Enrique refers to are so deep that they are undetectable by the population, because it is their obligation to make them undetectable. Let's remember that during the lockdowns, we all talked with family and friends. We were able to tell them what we saw and what we said. But you can't compete in life with the 24-hour bombardment of news, propaganda, advertising, and press conferences. The neighbors who all think the same way because they're all caught up in that mindset. No matter how much you tell your father, mother, or brother, look at what's happening and try to reason with them. It's useless. You can't compete. What's the only way to get out of that? It's an inner awakening. It's an inner awakening that you can only achieve through one path, which is the path of pain. And pain will eventually lead you to want to ask, to want to be interested, to want to know more. Look, during the events of 2020, it was the time of the highest audience for all the spiritual awakening YouTube channels. Why? Because that's when the balance also tipped, or the scale leaned
In favor
of those people who really had a spiritual hunger and a desire to awaken. Since everything stopped, they had time and availability. Many were working from home, some remotely, others on furlough. A furlough, or
I don't know
how?
I'm telling you, if their intention was to shut down the frequency and vibration of the collective psyche,
Yes.
they failed. I think that
In fact, the
increased. I consider myself one of those people who always knew something wasn't right, but never. I reached such a level of understanding of the depth that this whole system implied. No, so corrupt, so terrible, so servile. The forces of evil. If not for the pandemic, we should be grateful, despite its toll on lives and mental health. All I can do is focus on the positives, like being here today. Without those events, I might not be here. I
agree, brother. It woke many people up. Look,
now for
so you realize you'll see it everywhere after this. And now, when the blackout happened, man, did you see it with Pedro Sanchez? There were two. There were two things you should have noticed. And the detail is that he told you, and he said in a press conference that the blackout happened at exactly 12:33. He did a press conference afterwards, a few hours later. And you realize that the scriptwriters know this because they tell him, look, say that you made a mistake. To emphasize again, 12:33, and I say it again. He says in the first press conference that he made a mistake. That's a lie. He had said 12:33 to say twice. 12:33. Whenever you go to an event like that, are you going to see the 33? In fact, even the medications on the official government website, brother, what did they put? They just arrived. Exactly. 333,666, medications, or 11,666,000 medications. Did you notice the 3 and the 11?
11 in a row.
Speaking of 666 and so on, do you want to finish the
666? I want to
add something that reminds me of the Manchurian Candidate with Denzel Washington. I'm not sure of its Spanish title.
It's the...
Really good. I have
to analyze it. I didn't.
I'm going to give you a fact, and
Let's see.
if it inspires you. It's called El Gracias. Well, in this movie,
By Manchurian...
Candidate, I don't remember how it was translated into Spanish. It's about mind control. Are you going to recognize the MK Ultra project there? Absolutely.
Son...
From a very wealthy family of United States senators, I mean, you can clearly see how the elites do that with their children. You know this since you've discussed it on your channel. Mind programming occurs twice, like in your example where he repeated 1,233.
No,
He made a mistake. He had to say it twice.
because...
Things that are said twice program you. For example, every time they call the character who is, let's say, well, I don't want to give spoilers, but the one who gives you a sign, They ask him for his name. Are you so-and-so? He says, yes. I'm talking to so-and-so again, right? Yeah, that's when he gives the order.
Don't you see? Okay, he tells him.
Twice, no?
I saw.
They do it with Delson Washington, the soldier.
But...
That everyone was subjected to hypnosis through trauma.
Yes, sir.
Have you talked about this too? Yes?
Which is the deepest mind control,
The deepest is trauma-based, like the Bourne saga.
Yes, it is.
Trauma-based mind control.
Exactly. Of
The super soldiers. They put all that on your face. So that, as Enrique says, when someone tells you about it, it has no signs of reality. It's purely fiction. For you, it will be fiction, but it's very real.
That's how it is. The truth is, what you said about 666 connects to cognitive manipulation in movies. One of them is conditioning. There's a lot of conditioning to violence. Exposing you to violence, simply so that we learn through vicarious learning, through what we observe, It's observational learning. You see that they behave violently, you imitate the violence, It hurt all of us a lot, like Rambo and all that. We loved weapons, but I never touched one in my life, man, and when asked, I'd say I love weapons. Why was that? I grew up watching Rambo, Jean-Claude Van Damme, and Schwarzenegger movies all about weapons on video home system almost every day. And in the end, when I got older, I realized, I said to myself, but I've never had a weapon in my life and I hate violence,
And even more, almost all the movies and series that come out, now I'm realizing it. The first scene is someone getting their head smashed open and boom, blood pouring out. It's really something noticeable. That's been studied.
Exactly. Now, I want to talk about blood and all that. I think it's extremely important. It's important, look, I'll finish with this, precisely because it's about making the population insensitive, so that later we're more likely to say, thank you, there's more budget for defense and wars, because otherwise people wouldn't support wars if we weren't, let's say, so lobotomized in that regard. And then the issue of blood. As you said, it's about desensitizing us so that we treat each other badly and don't cooperate, Because in the end, it causes a lot more arguments among our group of friends and everything. Because I'm going to explain a simple scientific experiment to you based on psychology, and it's been proven many times. I studied it in my second year of psychology. And it was simply that if they put you a weapon on the table, while we're having a conversation and arguing about something, how much more harm does that weapon do? The more heated our argument becomes. They first tried with a fork, then with a knife, then with a gun, and the more harm the weapon could do, the more aggressive they became toward each other, without using it, but just by having it there, man. So what do they do in the United States? What? I understand that they want to have their guns and everything. I totally get it.
Yeah, his defender, that's why. But
I'm being clear. I really admire and care about Tupac, and I understand why they want guns. Now let me tell you something. For those of us who know about psychology and know about statistics and probability, there's no higher mortality rate than where there are guns. And Tupac knew it back then, and he used to say there's no higher rate. Back then he used to say Marine City, which was what he was referring to. No place has a higher rate of black people killed by other black people. In the end, poor black people end up fighting each other. One over drugs, another over a woman, another over something else, because we're all hot-headed. And when we have a weapon, it's not the same as me going and slapping you twice as me going and shooting you twice. So, let's put it this way. Statistically, in terms of probability, it always affects us, let's say, the poorest stratum of society.
talking about the whole blood thing, the whole music thing, the whole movie thing. How do they condition our behavior at a cognitive level? Everything we see and everything we hear, I think it has an impact on how we behave. I don't know if you agree with this statement.
Of course.
I want to talk about the relationship between demons and music and Hollywood.
Like every MTV event, every Grammy event, every Oscar event.
It seems more like a kind of display to the world of who they truly worship. And anyone who has even a little bit of awareness and the intention to look beyond what can simply be seen and perceived will realize it. That they are worshippers of the evil, of Baal, of Moloch. What do you think? How can these demons be described? With the Old Testament as a reference?
Before answering that question, will you allow me to express the fact that, let's say, I researched this topic very thoroughly? I realize there is a lot of evidence in the ancient texts in the Old Testament. Absolutely, as you mentioned, this applies to movies, television series, and the music industry. I turned the page since I knew what it was about and now focus on other things. Just to make it clear that I don't have any interest in highlighting it either. But well, since you're asking me, I'll tell you that yes, that's right. We find references to what in the Kabbalah is called the Avodas Dara, which means God is foreign. In general, God refers to foreigners. It's plural and means outsiders or strangers not part of Israel. Viewing the people of Israel as Yashar, the direct one, represents a state of consciousness. The only God that the people of Israel have is, they call him Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy Blessed One, Ein Sof, the Infinite, Unity, and Source. That's the Kabbalists' God. But there are references to foreign gods, those who are worshipped, and to whom the people of Israel, that is the pure souls, become corrupted in order to obtain favors in exchange, right?
This could also be defined as those gods to whom the people of Israel, while wandering the desert for the promised land, Moshe descended and saw them worshipping the golden calf. Those are the gods.
No, the golden calf. It's a code that I'm going to explain to you now.
Huh?
But what does it have to do with a person's attitude in life? That attitude will attract demons that will attach to them. They'll attract events into their life. Pretty pernicious, right? So, to finish the argument I was presenting, it's this. There are numerous and well-known biblical references, and in the Kabbalah there are many about the so-called Shedim demons, but the Shedim demons are actually entities that are generated as a result of certain actions that are performed. Stop! For example, an entire chapter of human misconduct creates Shedim, or demons. Let's go with that. There is the calf, but when it comes to the rituals that the elites perform to ingratiate themselves and make deals, let's say, with the main demons, in capital letters, he goes to Moloch, who I won't even name. Well, those rituals are blood rituals, human sacrifice, and so on and so forth. That is completely condemned in both the Torah and the Kabbalah. Why? Because in the end, and Enrique will explain this to you much better, that creates a very high price that has to be paid. The Kabbalists teach if you want to receive blessings, berasho, blessings in your life in this physical world, what you have to do is simply open the door to God that you have inside you. And for that, it's simply about studying, meditating, and planting a seed in the upper worlds, so that seed can manifest in the physical world. And you also have to do something else, which is to conduct yourself in a righteous way through life. How do you conduct yourself? By not making a golden calf. And that's where I connect you with the calf. What is a calf? A calf is a Kabbalistic code of 3 Hebrew letters, Ayin, Gimi, and Lamed, pronounced in Hebrew, eagle. Let's create an acronym for eagle. The first letter, Ayin, comes from Ainara. Evil eye, envy. The envious person is doing better. Someone who doesn't wish well for others, who not only doesn't feel happy, but is also bothered when things go well for someone else, that's envy. Gimel stands for Gilui Arayot, referring to forbidden unions with loss of seed. We've discussed the significance of this loss in other programs. It attracts curses. Why? Because the Kabbalists teach, and this is a super secret, that the seed of a human, of a man, nourishes those shirin, those demons that are created through those acts of living wrongly and rituals to worship other strange gods. And finally, there's the letter Lamed, Lashon Hara, the evil tongue, saying bad words, criticizing others, and so on. If they do all 3, it's a calf. That's the code. When Moshe descends from Sinai, he finds the people of Israel worshipping a calf. They've short-circuited everything. Why? Because Moshe abandoned them. He goes up the mountain, which actually isn't called a mountain. It only says, I went up to Sinai. But Sinai isn't a mountain. It's a code. Also, Sinai and Sulam both have a gematria of 130. Ladder refers to the tree of life and your level of consciousness. That is, Moshe is the highest level of consciousness that a human being can aspire to in this world. He isn't a person, but an inner consciousness you can aspire to
That's what it means to read ancient texts. I didn't understand until I learned from him. Then everything made sense to me. That's why. So I love that you explained this about Moses, because it really gives you a completely different perspective when you understand the analogies, because they hold a lot of truth. All the ancient texts, man, understand the nature of reality, but they're written in code.
It's all in code.
It is.
Absolutely, the Torah is coded and Kabbalah is the science that deciphers it for a better life. It's the instruction manual for human beings and it's explained clearly there. For example, when Moshe goes up to Sinai, it's described when God reveals the name to him. Moshe at one point says to God, when I go to the people, what should I call you? What is your name? And that's in Exodus 3:14. Pay attention to the code 3:14. It will sound familiar to everyone, especially to mathematicians.
Yes, it is the...
PI, I'll explain. And the thing is, the verses, the numbering of the verses is not random, it's also coded. In 3:14 it says, tell them I am who I am. It's mistranslated. In Hebrew it's I will be what I will be, or who I will be. It's a future tense, it's not a present, it's not a past. Why is it a future tense? Because it's telling you that it's the ability you have to be whatever you want to be in the future. That's the 22, the wild card.
Let's say...
Of being every path you desire. Curiously, Eshe Asher Eshe has a gematria of 543, while Moshe's gematria is 345. They are perfect mirror numbers. The Torah says Moshe was the only one to see God face to face.
The
perfect mirror. That is the level of consciousness. Moshe is the one that has the awareness of the circularity of this world. 3:14.
Of the
infinity of possibilities that can be rendered, materialized in this world, and that is called Moshe consciousness. That is Moshe. Moshe is not just a guy who goes up to Sinai. No, it's not that. That's a story for children. It's a superficial story, which is the shell, the outer layer, so that we can really delve into the secret. Careful, making an effort.
Because
Kabbalah values your effort to sit, study, and investigate. And that's where your soul, like the samurai's sword, is forged and rises. And that's the key to the name of Moses.
returning to the topic of demons in the Torah, that is because of the reflection you've made or the knowledge you've just shared with me in this program. I understand, but correct me if I'm wrong, these topics are complex. It's that we create demons with our behaviors. That's right, thank you. So, who is Baal? Because he also appears in the Bible. Who is Moloch?
Why do they make the Balenciaga ad? You, Enrique,
yes, you will be.
familiar with this?
The Balenciaga ad featured Baal Enciaga, which in Latin means Baal is the king. Balenciaga is also a Basque surname. If I remember right, the ad they showed in the tape was strong negative priming.
That I used.
In that ad that got them cancelled, it even said Baal with 2 A's.
And Baal,
Is a demon. So,
Enrique, tell me,
what's the relationship between demons and the industries we discussed?
that's how it is. This goes in several ways. The energetic one, they use negative priming by openly showing Baal worship, making it hard for you to believe it's real. Besides the negative priming in video games, there are 2 key aspects I want to discuss. And one is the spiritual aspect. The fact that all these music videos lower our vibration, that they're so negative, where we see them doing rituals, or like that Balenciaga ad where there were kids and how there are things to tie them up. In fact, the tape that says Baal is like the kind police used to cordon off a crime scene. And so on. It's all very well thought out. So what's going on? Does that have a double meaning? On one hand, they're creating negative priming for you, of course. On the other hand, there's the energetic side. When you consume all this, they generate a specific energy that makes you much more likely to be easily parasitized by entities from other dimensions, which don't necessarily have to be specific demons. Sometimes they're more basic entities, but they feed on our negative feelings and things like that. So that's why they always reinforce all of this. Later, to go deeper, I remember that for me, a huge awakening point was during an MTV ritual like you mentioned before. I remember it really impacted me, and that's what made me start the channel, that impact. I'll remember it because it's a crucial moment in my life. And it was in 2013 when I created the channel in December on the 25th, not December, 24th, 2013. And I had just watched the MTV show, and right then Eminem was saying, pointing back at the screen, when the reptile dragon appeared, he said, "That's our God," or "That's my God," he said. And of course, I was really shocked at that moment, and that's when I said, I have to start pointing this out, because they always do this, every event. They're always saying that their God is the demon and so on. Why are they doing that?
So,
That's when we get into what Raul says. Do you really know that you can exchange favors with these entities if you know how to make deals with them? But the price is extremely high. We're talking about prices as high as giving up your own children. As an offering, I have the former President of the United States. I have a video.
Joe Biden
Joe Biden,
sniffs kids. Yes.
I have a video where you can hear him directly. He tells the 13-year-old girl she turns him on. I have this directly.
Yes, they say it, and they...
The parents nearby hear and laugh at the joke. People wondered, if the joke was heard or recorded on camera, how could anyone still laugh at it? Because they belong to a Lodge Illuminati, and part of showing that you're with the Lodge. It's giving up your children in case they want to abuse them or whatever, or sacrifice them. So keep this in mind. Why do they do it? One reason is to show that I'm with the Lodge and that the Lodge is above anyone in my family. The Lodge is always above anyone in your family, and we see that as negative priming in any of the Lodge series, like for example The Order, where they already said it explicitly in the plot. Only the Lodge matters. Even if something happens to your son or wife, it doesn't matter. The Lodge always comes first. It's the key requirement for advancing and reaching higher levels within a Lodge. And what happens? Then, at the level of black magic, it's very important to sacrifice something very dear to you. So that negative entity absorbs all that energy of betrayal, which is betraying your own family, your own blood. With the energy of betrayal they feed on, they grant your wishes. Production companies start calling and offering you more money. Things start coming easy for you, man, because this is all about energy and things just come really easy for you. What's going on? But then there's the bad side, that you didn't just sacrifice your son. Then things begin happening to you. You get a lot of money on one hand, but then you get audited and they take half of your cash. Or you get a lot of women, but then one of them accuses you of gender-based violence, you know? And those things happen like that and end up forming a kind of funnel. So then they want to escape themselves because they say, damn, I have everything, but at the same time I'm suffering a lot. This happened because very negative entities gave it to him. Let's put it that way.
For example, we can talk about Sam Smith,
Billie
Eilish, all these artists. You can even see a change in the aesthetics. Externally, in how they dress, how they do their makeup, how they present themselves to the world. Before and after, they went from being good artists who had good numbers to being artists known worldwide. It's hugely successful with millions of views and widespread recognition. Before they were normal people, just regular folks. And by selling themselves to these entities or these lodges, they end up showing themselves with a certain vulgarity.
absolute vulgarity, hypersexualization.
Singing songs for parents, having sexual relations in clubs with transsexuals.
Exactly.
And you say, damn, what happened? And why is it these kinds of artists who suddenly blow up and not others? Is it these ones, specifically Doja Cat? We can go on and on and on. We have countless videos asking in interviews, how did you get here? I sold my soul to the devil.
Man, let's see. I think they're the most easily manipulated. I don't know the specific cases you just mentioned, because I admit I'm pretty disconnected from that whole world.
All right, what are you doing?
I made it clear a while ago, once I understand how things work, I focus on that. My thing is spiritual growth and spreading awareness for the elevation of consciousness. That's it. But having said that, I do say that it makes perfect sense. I mean, if what I want is to make the population's consciousness fall to its lowest, keep them in survival mode, make them have uncontrollable desires for the lowest things, and make sure they care about nothing else but that. Well, in the end, what I'm going to promote through audiovisual means, through all the media, etc., is going to be this. Who do I need to attract? When attracting people, I'll focus on those with the most commercial potential who are already working in some capacity. They are
Good artists, but
also with a condition, and that they are manipulable, highly manipulable. It really reminds me, sorry Jota, of the movie The Matrix when Cypher, the traitor, meets with Smith in a secret place. Do you remember? Right? Yes. And then Cypher says to him, I don't want to remember anything.
I want to be somebody.
Famous, an actor. Actor or artist? He said actor, so yes, that's true. Because also this character, Smith, addresses him as Mr. Reagan, Ronald Reagan, the actor.
He who was an actor, yes.
Sir,
No.
I don't want to remember. The guy eats a steak and says, I know it's not real.
It tastes so good.
But does it really taste that good? So they're always putting it right in your face?
Yeah, the thing is, Enrique, what I see is that also, it seems that selling yourself to these entities has extremely high benefits in the material world.
But they're temporary. Exactly. What Enrique said, it's actually a deception. I mean, all those people are being deceived.
Did they do the Thriller one?
But temporarily, they will have a lot of benefits, only on a material and economic level mainly, and feeding their ego, which is a huge problem, because what you want is to control your ego, not let your ego control you. But temporarily, as Enrique has explained well. That is, there comes a moment when everything starts to fail. Why? Because their soul is inevitably corrupted. Kabbalah teaches that the soul, now like a house with cracks, allows thieves to sneak in through its cracks.
That's clearly shown in Snoop Dogg's music video and also in Doja Cat's, which was still popular recently. What is that? You can see how the devil comes and grabs her head, and it's like he possesses her. These entities possess you, causing you to act in ways you never did before. Like you said, you end up going with transsexuals when you had never questioned your sexuality before. You end up, What is causing you to make new mistakes you didn't make before?
Little children sacrificed, right?
Atrocities. You get caught up in situations, which is what I mean about the energy that draws that in. Ultimately, you seek money and fame, but your ego consumes you. You end up vibrating at a very low frequency. You end up surrounded by very manipulative people who mainly want to take advantage of you, of your success. And that's how it is. You end up around cocaine addicts, rapists, and others and become depraved yourself. So, what you saw represented in the music video also with Snoop Dogg, and that's how it is. They gradually lose their essence and keep selling themselves until they no longer recognize who they are. And this was said by Tupac before he died. He stated this clearly in a 1996 interview, or possibly in 1995 before going to jail. I don't remember well, right? Well, he said, look, I can look at myself in the mirror and see my soul, man, and I recognize myself. So I'm proud of what I see, but they can't because they sold themselves out. Do you understand? So the mirror, we all know, those of us who know about symbolism, that it refers to another dimension. It's always represented that way in all the movies. That's how it is. When an interdimensional journey or a dream like that happens, the mirror appears. Always water, an open faucet rain. They always do it the same way. So what happens? This story is always the same, man. They end up getting lost themselves. And Tupac didn't lose that, the essence. That's why they really had to kill Tupac, because Tupac wouldn't sell out. He preferred to sell less, man, than to sell himself. One time he threatened MTV. This is recorded and he was very young. We're talking about Tupac being around 22 years old or so. He died at 25. And Snoop Dogg was by his side. And he started talking bad about MTV, saying, "Stop harassing me like this in the news. Are you going too far?" And saying and threatening them, "I don't care. I'll return to holding street concerts since I know I can fill them up. I don't need you." Threatening them while Snoop Dogg looks at the camera. As if saying, "Are you biting the hand that feeds us?" And anyone who looks up a bit about MTV, you can even see that in some of their headquarters they have the Masons logo and everything. It's not something that's hard to see.
Tupac also recognized it quickly. The thing about Puff Daddy and all that was already known back then. And look in the end how...
Yeah, everything came to light, man. And not everything came out. And it didn't come out. But
if it came out, it was just to distract people. There's still more, but...
All the news you hear is only what they want released.
That's right, man. That's right.
Yes, all the news they know. It's because he was really just a pawn, someone they could do without. Because the information that came out about him, the videos of him dragging a woman by the hair, they had those videos for a very long time.
Or
People think that's good, there's hope. But no, they're doing this on purpose to make you believe there's hope.
Exactly. The interesting thing about this conversation, for me, the essential thing is, what does all this mean in our lives? I mean, how does this make us wake up in our lives? How does it change our reality? That is, what benefit does it have for a person's life to know this knowledge that we are sharing here? Yes, or others that make you wake up?
Me, it's extremely important. It's extremely
Important, because
At the end of the day, if you're not able to see all these symbols that are being used, I also remember a Christmas Netflix series. There were some kids who put up Isle of Santa, yes. And in the movie, it was recorded how the kids got confused, switched the letters around, and instead of Santa, it was Satan, Satan. I mean, I love Satan.
Of course.
If it's a mistake, you just reshoot the scene. It's not a big deal.
no,
mistake that.
they leave you for a reason. Also, Christmas, a connotation, as Enrique knows, that's quite satanic.
No, in Hispanic countries, it's the baby Jesus who brings the gifts. Do I have Santa Claus? Yes. I don't like Santa Claus. I don't like Santa Claus. I like baby Jesus.
It's funny what you say, because baby Jesus is actually the son of the Virgin Mary and Saint Joseph. In the Catholic Christian tradition, well, he symbolizes something else. He symbolizes that at the winter solstice, which is on the 23rd, 24th, and 25th
Those three?
days, that's when, let's say, something happens. Notice that in English it's called Christmas. I mean, more is mass, it's weight. And what was intended in ancient traditions was that during those days, coinciding with the solar calendar, you shed weight. That is, you perform an act of restraint in your behavior and you fast to shed weight, because that's what would correspond with the natural astrological circadian cycle. And yet, what do we do at Christmas?
That's right, brother. We put on...
More weight, alcohol, overeating. There's always leftover food in every house.
all of them, man. In the end, it seems like they always do everything, so we do it the other way around, man.
That's right, because Christ, what is Christ or Christ in this case? Well, it would be our inner Messiah. I go back to the concept of Messiah. Anyway, for the inner Messiah to emerge, you have to get rid of what weighs you down, of what is heavy. Notice that the Hebrew name of God, Yud He Vav He, shares the Gematria 26 with the Hebrew word kabet. It's liver, but it's also gravity. So why do they have equivalent gematриas? Is it saying that to remove gravity, the weight and mass from your life, you must open your heart and soul? Because the tetragrammaton refers to the soul, though translated as God, it's actually a fractal of God. It's the holographic principle, we are divine sparks. So feed your soul and then stop feeding the mass that gives you spiritual gravity.
And it's also like being more anchored to the earth. You're more materialistic,
More manipulated?
easier to manipulate and so on, you know? And I love that. That's what I was telling you, Jota. Things carry a lot of symbolism, and as you said, help us anticipate. I didn't take medication, wasn't scared, and went out during lockdown, man, because I had already been through a lot in previous years. So I already knew about all this. It was no surprise to me. It lets us anticipate, which is why waking up in these areas is so beneficial. But what he was already saying about symbolism and all that, when you understand all these things, you realize that symbolism goes in many directions. Christ is also that liquid that rises up through our 33 vertebrae.
And so on.
And also symbolically that liquid that we actually have and that helps us, let's say. This way we can achieve higher consciousness if done correctly. Didn't you know? The Christ. What's it called? Well, that's another of the symbolisms of Jesus Christ. Well, it's also a liquid that we have which helps us reach higher states of consciousness if we know how to keep ourselves well. And also, as I was telling you, Jesus is also symbolically the sun as well, which I've already explained to you. So symbolically Jesus, because of that sacrifice. As you were saying, it's the sun when it sets during the winter solstice. That's why it rests on the horizon that day. 23, 24, 25, sorry.
23, 24, 25?
It's 22, it's really 22, it lands, 23, 24, it stays landed, and 25 goes back up. That's why it's like Jesus was reborn and is telling you the story of the sun.
He resurrected on the third day.
He resurrected on the third day. Do you understand? What am I trying to say with this? Reality is complex, and I'm not going to claim Jesus didn't exist.
Now!
We're telling you the symbolisms based on Jesus and Christ, so you know how many things there are.
Let me see. The problem I have is with the symbolism of Jesus and related topics. I'm not really into those topics, just like you said before that you weren't into the topic because you didn't. No, because back in the day I already looked into it. Yes, already.
I looked into it, I understood.
What there was, and I don't need anything else.
And really, I'm telling you, and I'm being honest, and I have to be honest about this. It's part of the price I pay for analyzing movies and music videos. That's designed to lower people's vibration. It's more than just the content now.
Yeah,
Not just the content of movies, for example, horror movies. They're meant to make you feel fear, to keep you vibrating low, you know? And those entities are feeding well while you're sitting on your couch, vibrating low and feeling scared, you know? Do those energies benefit these entities? I'm not just talking about that, but also that kind of opens up interdimensional portals and allows astral larvae to suck our energy. Notice how media, music videos, and series now use certain frequencies. Before, they didn't use such disturbing sounds, let's put it that way. Now they use some sounds, brother, that I can't even classify anymore. I know frequencies can extinguish fires or disperse protests using frequency weapons. They add frequencies to music videos that change our thinking and neural synapses. They're very skilled at it. And we're not just talking about cognitive manipulation through symbolism or the storyline anymore. Now we're discussing the specific frequencies and sounds used in the music. What is it then? There are many layers. You always have to be cautious, right? I told Raul, is this the price for analyzing everything? I absorb so much negativity even when I try to stay positive. You know, a lot of those things. I don't have the level to rely on them because they're very new, and above all, the series is new. Dude, certain frequencies in their sounds make me feel unsettled. And I can't tell you exactly where it's affecting me, but it's affecting me, man. It's affecting me on a vibrational level, even on a soul level, you know? That's the price I pay for analyzing things. I have to review them a few times, analyze everything, and listen carefully, which is affecting me. And Raul is the one who avoids that, and he does it well, you know? It's my content, my livelihood, and what makes me feel good. Every time I find evidence, man, I get excited. The hair on my arm stands up, man. It's awesome. But you have to admit it, I also absorb a lot of crap from...
there. And
You have to say it that clearly, you know, from...
anyway, I'll add that it's also written by the prophets of Israel, the oldest and the wisest. Those who were more connected than today called it the era of the Messiah, the era of our inner Messiah. Whether or not someone embodies that
presence of...
in an individual way. You know, it is clearly said that it symbolizes going down to the ship, getting your hands dirty in the mud so that you can later lift it up. So what you are really doing is, yes, you are getting your hands dirty, you are going down into the mud, but then you lift it up. Because if you didn't have the right vessel of soul, you wouldn't be here, the Creator wouldn't be putting you in this situation. You have the right vessel. And it's just about being aware of the work you're doing, protecting yourself, but you're honestly doing it really well. If you weren't meant to be here, the Creator wouldn't have placed you here. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Do you understand? I want
To discuss a topic I find very important and closely related to the Torah. Giants appear in the Torah and in the Book of Enoch, which I believe the only official religion. Judaism, which maintains canon, also excluded it from the Torah. The Book of Enoch isn't part of the Hebrew tradition. They have discarded it, even though in the times of Jesus it was read by the Jews. That's documented and discarded. Even the Catholic Church has abandoned it. I think only the Ethiopian Church still keeps it, if I remember correctly. But giants are mentioned in the Torah, both the Catholic and the Hebrew versions. Tell me a little bit about the giants, and what do you know about the Book of Enoch?
Well, those are two issues, two questions. Giants, as they appear in the Hebrew text in the book of Genesis, the word is Nephilim.
Nephilim.
And I've already explained in a previous program with you that Nephilim is a typology of Erez Ras. There are 5.
Which are the
Evil entities.
Are those entities that infiltrated the Jewish people. but they are not actually Jewish, and in reality they are the world elites. Yes, the world elites are not really Jewish, they are Erez Ras. This is very important.
And Erez
Ras and Nephilim are like, no, Erez Ras. There are 5 types which I explained on your previous show. We went into it in quite a lot of detail. And one of them is Nephilim, which translated into Spanish from the Torah or in the Bible is translated as giants. Now, if you read it literally, you think they are giant men, 3 or 5 meters tall, which has been proven because remains have been found.
of that.
It seems that those kinds of human beings existed in a previous Westworld before this one.
So that
Everyone understands. In a previous round of this video game, since this is about creating and destroying worlds, as Kabbalists say, in a previous world there were larger human beings, and remains have been found. But the Kabbalistic view is that giants are Nephilim, and Nephilim means the fallen ones. Literally, what does the fallen ones mean? It means they were with women.
So here is where Raul, sorry for being incisive, I've been quiet the whole time. This is where in Nock's book, they literally tell you about that encounter between the fallen angels, yes, who plan to have sexual relations with human women, and from there the offspring, yes.
So we have to know that there are entities that are not from this dimension. What they do is escape cafes, discipleship returns by Rainer to recently possessed women. And in the esoteric tradition, they are called succubus and incubus, and in the Kabbalistic tradition, they are called dibuk or dibukim. So they are entities that are not physical. And many women who are listening to this podcast probably know what I'm talking about. They get into your bed and get in with you, and you feel that there's something there and you don't know what it is, and you feel that they're doing something to you. So what does that mean? Well, what it means is that it exists. The Torah explains that such entities exist and briefly describes the Nephilim
and of these
and of
those sexual encounters with these entities
their
are born.
children are born. Here I go. So the next time a woman makes love with a man and gets pregnant, she still has the energetic and informational imprint of that other entity who was with her before. Are you following me?
Yes, and
He joins to the creature that is born. So there are many people who are born with that vibration and who naturally are evil. Yes. That's how it is. That's how it works. For that to happen, that kind of woman has to be a woman who is vibrationally in tune with evil. At least in part, because otherwise she wouldn't attract it. In this world, everything is resonance and affinity. That's why behavior is so important, and conducting yourself well in life so that your affinity is with other things. I don't know if I make myself clear. So, is that why the Kabbalists insist so much that you have to conduct yourself in a righteous way and strive for a higher vibration? Ultimately, everything results from the level at which you vibrate.
and that's how it is. Your actions, in the end, what were we talking about? That's what will lead you to who you really are. Because you can fool everyone and tell them whatever you want about who you are and how you want to be or pretend to be. The thing is, that shows on a vibrational level. So no matter how much you try to hide it, if you're addicted to cocaine, or if you're, for example, a gambling addict, or any of those conditions that can seriously lead you to low vibration corners, because you owe a lot of money, because you're sad, because you're always thinking about negative things like lust and so on, those things show in you, even if you try to hide them. It's your vibe, it's what you put out. So are you going to attract Peña like that? And so even if you don't want to, your actions will speak for you, even if you don't want them to, and then people who mess with you will come closer. And that's why most people in the end, why do abused girls usually attract more abusers? It's really because of their vibration, believe it or not. They vibrate at a frequency that attracts those people. Unless they break that cycle, there's no way. Men, they always end up with someone who mistreats them. The same thing happens with guys. Girls who are blackmailed for money, deceived, or lose everything, or they face false accusations of gender violence, etc., but it's due to resonance and vibration.
Is that so? That's why it's so complicated when it comes to legislation, so everyone understands me. Which is carried out by a legislative chamber. I don't want to personalize. In Spain, let's say legislative chambers around the world make legislation. In Spain, it's the Congress. In Italy, the Congress, etc. But of course, they are politicians who are there. There must be all kinds. There are all kinds. I know that. But most are already at an ego, vibration, and consciousness level that makes things difficult. That laws are made then for the rise of consciousness. So laws are created like the ones you refer to in your programs or the ones you talk about as well, and so on and so on. This has been seen many times, which is why I always return to the beginning, to square one. I mean, the important thing in this game is that the starting square is a good one. And if your starting square is good, your life will be good. I know, what's it about? Conduct yourself well in life. Let your mouth only be used to bless others. Let your mouth only be used to spread knowledge, to help. Let your mouth be used to teach. Let your actions help everyone you can. Your podcast, for example, yours, mine. We're all here because we know how important it is to raise the world's consciousness. Raising global consciousness relies on increasing individual awareness. Not for the greater good, that's it. One fallacy.
True, the
collective good over individual good is a fallacy so that people don't love themselves.
true.
It has to be individual good first, because individual good is what generates collective good. Exactly.
True. For
The fractal holographic principle, what God has joined together, let no man separate. It's not talking about marriage. It discusses quantum entanglement in quantum mechanics, meaning your actions impact all of humanity.
did you know this has been proven in experiments?
So, to get back to the topic, Nephilim, right? Yes, the Nephilim. In Knox's book, it's discussed in much more detail. Specifically, it talks about the intercourse they had in the Torah and in the Catholic Old Testament. Did they decide to do without them? Why do you think this happened? And above all, what is behind the book of? I can tell you what's in the book of and about the character Enoch. Enoch, who is a character that is widely accepted within Judaism. In Judaism, especially in Kabbalah, there are two well-known figures who didn't die but instead vanished, transcending to another plane. One is Enoch Hanosh in Hebrew, who becomes the Archangel Metatron. And that Archangel Metatron is the chief of all the angelic hosts. Nothing more, nothing less. And another figure is the prophet Elijah Nafi, who transforms into the angel Sendelphon. And then there's a third case, which is the case of Moses, the historical Moses, who is said to have never entered the Promised Land, even though he led the people of Israel to the Promised Land. But he didn't enter, and no one knows where his body is, and no one knows where he died. You see? Remember, Moshe, represents a state of consciousness. To enter the Promised Land, you must transform, and that requires changing your name. The change of name is a change of consciousness. Anof, Metatron, Elias Navi, Sandalphon, Moses. The name is now unknown. Or, for example, Yaakov. The name becomes Israel when he overcomes. The stars once he overcomes the demons that wound his thigh. Despite his wounds, God renames him Israel and elevates him. Is this a higher state of consciousness? What's important about Eno, the character you asked about? Well, he's a character who prototypically demonstrates the capacity for transcendence in every human being, the divine spark that every human carries. Who has the potential to transcend this world? Without the need to die, or let's put it another way, without the need to be aware that death is the end. Because obviously the physical body, of course, dies, but also the physical body, and that's something the laws of physics also confirm, it can also be transmuted, it can be transformed. We don't know the potential in DNA, which, by the way, has 22 pairs of chromosomes, 22 pairs of chromosomes, with an additional autosome, and that would make a number of 23. And 23 is the archetype, the number of a Hebrew letter that is not in the current Hebrew alphabet. As you already know, there are 22,
But,
which all the Kabbalists know, and which is called the letter Shin with 4 branches. which represents the consciousness of the Messiah and which will only appear in this era. That is, when each human being transcends their own consciousness, update themselves, and is able to see a reality different from the one we see, which is what we are in. Those concepts are quite profound. That is what the archetype of Enoch Hanok represents in the video, and Metatron in what he transforms into, in what he transcends to. It's absolutely important because he wants to tell you that you are the favorite child of the Creator. He, you, all of us in potential. We are the favorite child of the Creator, of the creative intelligence. We just have to listen to what it tells us, follow the guidance it gives us, and make a path for Him in our hearts so that He is the one who guides our life and not us. To have the pride to think that we are actually making decisions. He decides, directs, and runs everything. And the important thing there is that when you feel aligned with your life mission, you are being guided by Him. And that's the most wonderful thing in the world, because then your success and protection are assured and everything in life will be blessings. There may be events that are difficult, that are challenges, but you will always have the resources and help will appear for you along the way. And that is the Enos archetype. Brother!
Me, when it comes to giants? It's just that there is so much evidence, that directly points to it already. Nowadays, man, we have people who are really huge, so you can already see that there's some kind of phenomenon that tends to make people big. But then you stop to think and say, is it really about hiding that there could be another type of human, bigger ones? What? Ancient texts even mention women dying in childbirth because the babies were too big. Do you realize it actually works out well for them? So that we are very limited in terms of beliefs and so on. We are much more easily manipulated and we really believe that we are unique. So, the thing is, it's kind of like the National Aeronautics and Space Administration thing, Do they really need to tell you a certain story to limit you? And you would ask yourself a lot more questions if you realized there was another kind of humans, that there were bigger ones. You would start asking yourself more questions. That's why I firmly believe they removed it from the Bible, because that made you ask yourself a lot more questions. In fact, it was very interesting. I did a show with Raul, and I remember you explained to me that you translated a phrase correctly that indicated the earth could be flat. How would I know? I was impressed.
I want to touch on that topic right now and transition to another section that I think is very important. Raul, the shape of the earth according to the Bible, according to the Torah. In the Torah, it doesn't explicitly say that the earth has any particular shape. It doesn't tell you the earth is like this or like that. Explicitly, no. In the book of the Zohar, which is the quintessential book of Kabbalah, there is indeed an explicit reference. I discussed this extensively in a program on Enrique's channel, but I also think a thorough analysis of the text in Aramaic is needed. It's very technical, so I won't reproduce it here. It would take at least 2 hours to analyze. But anyway, what I came to say is that the translation was wrong, and that from a Kabbalistic point of view, you could clearly see it in the original Aramaic text. The fact is that it's not referring to the earth being round, it's referring to the earth. Because of the roots it used, the word roots it used, which was the root. Gal means round, but it also refers to rotation or something that rotates. And the word that immediately followed, which was the word dor, which means generations. It was really showing that we're in a cycle of generations or souls rotating, the cycle of reincarnations. It's not talking to you about the shape of the earth, it's talking to you about the very meaning of this video game. It's a video game in which if you make a golden calf, because it's also in the immediately preceding word in the same text of the Zohar. So, are you going to get trapped in the wheel, in the rotation of souls? When are you going to stop being trapped in the rotation of souls? The moment your behavior is impeccable. And when your conscience has the priority of making God dwell in your heart. It is written in Exodus 25:8, and you shall make me a sanctuary, and I will dwell in them. We're sparks, we're a temple, do you get it? That's in the Gospels and the Torah, and you need to understand it well. It's not that he said the earth is flat or round, but what he's actually explaining to you The argument that many scholars use to say that the earth is round according to the Kabbalah, I say that's not true, because what is correctly translated and interpreted, in my view, is what I'm explaining here. That it's about a wheel of rotations, of reincarnations, and that, yes, is widely supported by the Kabbalists. Whether the earth is flat or round is irrelevant to me. I tell you my personal opinion. I'm not interested in it at all. Why? It doesn't affect my life, priorities, or view of reality. Whether there are extraterrestrial ships that come here or not, to me it's irrelevant. Why? Because it doesn't impact my life. If Project Blue Beam is there, waiting and warming up on the bench to come out after the pandemic, that's fine with me. I already know what's coming, so what? I'll keep living my life, searching within and learning from what happens to me. I'm going to help my brother if my brother needs help, and I'm going to try to spread information that awakens people's consciousness. But nothing else. Maybe I'm already in another phase of the game, and I'm very interested in showing that this phase of the game is fundamental for me. Having said that, I'll finish. I'll tell you that it really depends a lot on each person's perspective and how important it is for each one in their life. For example, whether the earth is flat or spherical, or whether extraterrestrials exist or not. I think the first extraterrestrials are us here. The soul is not from this world. Well, those are issues that, let's say, no longer seem so relevant to me, although it's true. If you had asked me 10 or 15 years ago, I definitely thought they were relevant and researched them thoroughly. Now, I realize my priorities need to be different.
Me, brother, things as they are, and I'm a flat earther, and I'm not afraid to say it. For me, it's something relevant, but also because I work on that, you know? It also helped me notice a lot of negative priming about the flat earth. There's a whole episode about dinosaurs, which is called Yes?
That we mentioned first.
Exactly. The Disney one about reptiles, which is titled The Flat World by Charlene. And what the main character does is discover that the world is actually spherical, right? Everyone insists it's flat, and when defending it, they completely fool you, just like they did to us. A scientist arrives, and everyone talks as he enters the trial. They're judging her for saying the earth is spherical, and everyone asks, how can it be spherical if it's flat? And the scientist comes out and says, okay, look, I have the proof right here. And he shows it. He shows it like those toy spheres we used to have, spinning them around. Remember when you were a kid and there was a light? They used the same thing with the flat earth, including everyone, the jury and all. They say he's a scientist in a white lab coat. But when you stop to think about empiricism, man, if you take a sphere and pour water over it, the water doesn't stick, it falls off. So what they tell us about the Earth being a sphere and having water stuck to it, it can't be replicated in a laboratory, and our flat Earth model is very easy to replicate in a laboratory. So they say it can't be replicated in a lab. And then they tell you not to use the scientific method. Brother, I use the scientific method. Is your theory unsupported by the scientific method because you couldn't prove in a lab that water forms a sphere, much less that it can spin without water coming out? Goodbye? That's what happens when a tennis or soccer ball gets wet, man. When water spins, it gets thrown out, right? So it's the opposite of logical reasoning. For me, that's fundamental as it brings a lot of conditioning. As a child, they always taught us that it was like that, and that's how it was. And the scientist told you it was like that. In the end, you just accept things as they are without reflecting or thinking. So what is spherical trigonometry? Because when I try to see the ship as it moves away, it hides on the horizon. And you realize that if you take a P1000 camera and zoom in, man, you can still see the ship, man. And that spherical trigonometry that they turn into numbers, you realize it doesn't add up, that even though there are many kilometers, the curvature drop doesn't cover the buildings. You can see the Chicago skyline, or Mallorca from Barcelona, and so on. Examples that don't fit their model. But people don't even stop to reconsider it, dude, because we were conditioned since we were kids. And that's where all this comes in, man, the whole mafia of raising kids, you know? I also remember a negative priming from the Tenayecos where they put up a shelf while they're saying the dialogue, and on the shelf it looks like a library. And it says fiction. The fiction shelf. And on the fiction shelf they put the spherical earth and the rocket. You know, things we've been seeing since we were kids and we were never able to see. Dude. And then, over time, you realize that there are things you don't even stop to think about. Like earlier when we were talking, dude. Exactly, and I was telling you about it. Dude, about politics, and I was making that big reflection. Raul, and when you told me about energies and how these entities feed on them, now, when you see Pedro Sanchez and you look at that face he has now, man, what do you really think? It is
A very curious subject. Have you seen the evolution of Pedro Sanchez from when he entered the government to the face he has now?
me this.
I don't watch television.
Try not to contaminate it, no.
But let me describe him to you so you understand. He's a physically attractive person. He's a handsome guy, Pedro.
Man, I've seen him, let's say, around 2019, maybe 2020.
All right, he had that face. Handsome, tall guy.
Handsome? No.
We won't speak negatively about him. Everyone knows his actions. As a politician, this discussion is more elevated. But as his second term has progressed, obviously the corruption cases have been eating up his lies. He hasn't fulfilled anything he promised during the election campaign. In other words, he has been a very Machiavellian and perverse person in his political performance. The face he has now? Sunken cheekbones, eyes very empty of light, yes, many wrinkles, very gaunt. He looked like a consumed person. What do you think this is due to?
Basically, and I say this sincerely, we're already at a much deeper level. Pedro Sanchez is involved in lodges, though not the highest level ones, and he knows it. Pedro Sanchez, we have families here.
Did he send them?
Exactly, here we have the royal family, and the highest level lodges are run by the royal families. Then it goes down to the presidents of the government here. We had a case, for example, with the Pipis Fabra, the one who built the airport without airplanes, and who was linked to rituals, etc., and so on. But let's put it this way. Our politics are much lower within the lodges than, for example, American politics. Since they can't explicitly have monarchs there, you know? Well, then the monarchy already slipped into the political parties. If you look at it and follow the lineage, you'll see that most of the presidents of the United States have ties to the royal family of England.
And
Everything in the end stays in the family, you know? They are real families, but let's put it this way, not headline ones or not official ones, let's put it that way. The story is that after doing everything they ask of you, like this blackout thing, these are also things that are massive rituals to deceive people in the general population for purposes much darker than what they tell you. So does that affect him? It's not just what's visible, like you said, with the corruption cases coming out, the brothel involving the woman's father, everything that's coming out, man, they're really closing in on him now. Fortunately, some judges still do their jobs and help reveal these lies. But it's not just that that's wearing him down, it's also on a frequency level, being such a liar. And he's selling out not only his peers, but also his family members, just to cover his own ass? Because these are internal struggles they have inside, no? The low vibration entities are eating him alive. So he's not only drained energetically because he's depressed, because everything is going wrong for him, let's put it that way, but also on an energetic level, the entities are taking advantage of him because he's vibrating very low. He's getting closer to that dark vibe we often see in music videos or horror movies. That's how it is. We see him looking increasingly haggard. You can see his hair doesn't grow now, which is likely why it's cut so short, to hide his hair loss. His hair is much whiter and he's aged more. And like you said, his cheekbones look like he's not eating well or anything, so the low energy is really affecting him. He's connected to many things, but ultimately these pacts are just about power, right? And why do you stay in power, like we talked about before? Behind all this are dark entities that give you power and promise you'll remain if you do certain things. You see the price you pay, brother? Is living like this worth it when he has everything? He takes luxury vacations, has all the money, and we're funding his parties, right? Now, how is Democrat doing? What do they say about his family? How are they always talking about him on every show, especially as more truths emerge? Is it worth it for you? Many will say, look, brother, do you know what he has in the Dominican Republic? Money and...
nothing is worth selling your soul.
Is that so? Is that what they'll have to pay, man? I want
to ask you a question now. It comes from Raul's knowledge of the Torah and your knowledge of reptiles and a passage from Genesis. When does God the Source punish Dan and Eve? He curses her, saying she'll always be under her man and suffer in childbirth. He curses the man, telling him that the earth will no longer give him fruit without work and effort, and he curses the reptiles for having deceived the man. I would like to know both of your views on this specific point.
It is.
It's interesting, it is.
It's really great. Raul, please illustrate.
Look, like everything in the Torah, you have to decode it and you have to see what the key is. What is the Kabbalistic secret? The Kabbalists teach that the serpent, in Hebrew called Nahash, is associated
with our reptilian brain. That is, in our biological design, we have a part of the brain which is the reptilian brain that puts us in survival mode. The world elites and evil forces aim to keep everyone in survival mode. Enrique's discussion about cognitive manipulation process fundamentally concerns that reptilian brain because it's what keeps you there in that vibration.
There are 3 punishments, right, Raul?
Yes, that
They are in Genesis.
at the beginning,
One for the man, yes.
another...
For the woman, and another for the serpent, for the reptiles.
Okay, and the one for the man, which one is it?
For the man is that the earth will no longer give you its fruits. I'm not saying this literally.
Yes, but...
That he will have to sweat and bleed to get food from the earth.
Okay, I'll explain it another way. When the soul incarnates in this world, it forgets its true essence by losing its essence. It fully obeys the body's commands, and thus the reptilian brain, which controls the body, whenever the body is in survival mode, where the elites ensure it remains, and the strength of the evil. So does that mean that in that state you're subjected to the sweat of your brow, to hard work and slavery? Only in that state? But the thing is, humans have more brain power. We have the cortex, which is what makes us unique and different from animals. Reasoning, logic, intelligence. I always say God gave us a brain to use it. To reach complex conclusions, not simple ones, complex ones. Reaching conclusions like the negative private is an extremely complex conclusion. So, if you get out of that survival state, then you can reach much more complex conclusions, which will inevitably lead you to the knowledge of reality and will give you the hunger for knowledge and the desire to investigate and keep studying and to change your life, to change your profession, to leave your old profession, to try to improve your life. If things aren't working with your partner, will you leave? If your partner follows, isn't that a real revolution? I mean, you know, there are couples where one goes one way and the other goes another, and that's very complicated, right? But if you vibrate at a certain frequency, then things will go very well for you. And the serpent has a sentence, of course. Now, the serpent has a sentence because in the script, in this video game of the serpent of Enahash, it is to be defeated. There you have the archetype of Archangel Michael killing the serpent. Yes, Archangel Michael is one of the 4 most powerful archangels, Michael in Hebrew, whose function... Archangel Michael is actually another name for Metatron. He is Enoch. We revisit the archetype of a human transcending himself. This is a major Kabbalistic secret with a gematria of 101. So what happens when your inner Michael kills the serpent? What it's telling you is that you have subdued your reptilian brain and therefore you have come out of the survival state. You are no longer manipulable.
It's great, brother. How are things really? That's what we discussed. Everything has layers and a decoding in this reality. To truly understand reality, you must realize things are multifactorial. As we discussed earlier, the meaning of Christ doesn't have to detract from the fact that Jesus existed and incarnated on earth. That's how reality works. Otherwise, we couldn't learn so many spiritual lessons. So the part I love about that text is that it really reflects on the other side. What you're saying is that really, do the reptiles really have to pay for deceiving humans? The reptiles that are channeled by members of the royal families in the highest level rituals carried out by the Illuminati lodges, where humans are sacrificed to open those portals. And thanks to the genetics that the members of the royal families have, can the 4th dimensional reptiles be channeled for a short period of time to eat humans? Also, what do they give in exchange to the member of the royal family who's offering their body so the reptile can take it and eat? Just 10 minutes, which is short since it uses so much energy. So, what happens? In exchange, the reptiles give you knowledge about how to deceive humanity, and the reptiles are the ones who teach them everything about frequencies. Everything about negative priming and all these mind control and social engineering techniques like lockdowns, keeping us always in a state of scarcity and so on and so on. So does it really have a real basis? Put simply, on the physical, spiritual and symbolic levels and so on.
Yes, so I have a question, Casa. Enrique's view that certain types of rituals are performed to eat humans in order to lower the frequency of vibration with theology? Or I know that's not your thing with the Kabbalah?
Yes, absolutely, yes. And in fact, it's explicitly mentioned in the Torah, in the original Hebrew, the sacrifices to Baal. Is Moloch mentioned by name? And acts of witchcraft and cursing are also mentioned in the parasha. Balak, between the agreement between Balak and Bilam, well, very serious, very ugly witchcraft that brings, well, very bad results, right? But it also teaches us that the one who receives the curses can transform them into blessings. This is a super secret. So Moses, the character Moses, who we already know is the highest level of consciousness. Moses is the one who is able to turn a curse into a blessing. So he never heard curses from Bilam and Balak, but what he heard were blessings. This brings us to the movie The Matrix, where there comes a moment when Neo no longer needs to stop the bullets or dodge them. They simply don't affect him anymore. He turned it around. Vibrationally, your power of vibration will become so high that you'll be able to transmute the vibration that comes to you from outside.
Is that right, brother? And the truth is that we can compare it with many analogies, but if you're not able to reconsider how the nature of reality works, you'll never be able to control certain aspects. So, to give a more basic example of the same thing, for instance, with our content, they criticize you for some things and me for others. But we really turned that around because it made us grow spiritually, not to pay attention to the comments, you know? It helps you focus on self-improvement by emphasizing the 90% of comments that are positive. That 10% of negative people trying to spread negativity doesn't affect us, you know? In fact, sometimes it even motivates us to keep going, so we're turning it around, just like you said. So is that it? Taking advantage of every spiritual lesson, so that we can advance spiritually and get some benefit from something negative that was really negative and harmful to us, in principle.
It's very important, I think, to give the message, especially to people who have a certain responsibility to spread it. Because it affects me and it's hard for me. Negative and degrading comments have an impact, and praise can weaken you. And be careful with this. You have to be very cautious. Neither let them put you on a pedestal, nor let them stab you with needles, because both things are going to happen to you. Don't get attached to anything. Attachment means clinging not just to good things, but also to bad or even to nothing. And in that way, you'll be much freer to keep doing your job in a much more subjective way. And with your head, your cortex, when the time comes, control emotion with your head. That's its purpose.
So, this is where I ask a question. We spoke earlier off camera. This whole war, this whole process of disclosure that each one in their respective fields is carrying out, does it have as its ultimate goal awaken individual consciousness? That is, it's not so much a social war, but rather a spiritual conflict, right?
I laugh because the question is so well phrased that the answer I'm going to give you might be surprising. The purpose of the spreading you're doing is to wake yourself up. Waking yourself up also wakes others. The exercise of spreading that I'm doing, the goal is to wake myself up, because by waking myself up, everyone wakes up and so on. So it's a very individual act, because the good of the majority can't be above the good of the individual. As I explained before, the principle is the same. So everything we do to spread what excites us, do we actually do it, whether we know it or not? Because the first one, the benefit is oneself on a level of consciousness. And this is the key. Whether you make money or not, whether people criticize you or not, that's why all of that has to be taken to the maximum. But what does it bring to you? What does it make you feel? How do you feel? What challenges does it give you? We've already discussed some challenges of camera, which I think is fundamental. And so, by vibrational level and resonance, the people who choose to watch you or watch you will already connect with your vibrational level. And that's where they'll start to be influenced. But that's why it starts with you. The function is you.
Maintain the current course. The fact is, if you're broadcasting something that you truly feel in your heart you should do, you know? So as you said, you attract those people, and I, to give a down-to-earth example, have been driven to reach a much higher level of knowledge. Raul is absolutely right. I began by explaining negative priming and did so. I have all my videos except the 2 removed. YouTube took down 4 or 5 due to a strike. Statements from children who were inside the rituals and so on. Some like a French girl who explains things very explicitly, and another boy. Luckily, they left me the rest. And the 2 from the lockdown? I explained it with negative priming, but they still banned them. Other than that, I have everything, so people can see my context and my progress from the first video and the first live streams. I kept everything up to show my progress and improvement. You know? So I really was the first one who discovered the negative priming thing, because it's true, there's nothing in any other language or anything like that, you know? I'm not a copy of any channel or anything like that. That happened because I studied psychology, and then I made the connection, and watching The Simpsons opened my mind. Boom! Well, the thing is that I was the one who realized that, but when I started presenting evidence, people like Raul began telling me they enjoyed my meaningful content. And mixing it with their own themes, boom, I find more negative priming. And that happened to me with a lot of people, you know? And then, my own subscribers, man, writing comments like, "Hey, Enrique, did you miss this thing that was on the wall? This painting and the other things helped me improve, man, you know?" And then, with that improvement, I take it to another level because it confirms even more what I had said before. I'll give you an example. The last movie I analyzed was Kindergarten Polly, which no one would expect to have negative priming. Is Polly in kindergarten with Arnold Schwarzenegger? He's a cop and ends up going undercover as a kindergarten teacher for little kids. And you know, the usual, kids have always been impossible to control. Okay, where's the negative priming? Only in certain moments. Boom. The kids' classroom is always shown with a bloated reptile inside the classroom. When Schwarzenegger introduces the kids, he asks, "Tell me, what do your parents do for a living?" So the kids come out to face everyone else and tell what their parents do. Well, do you want to see that he actually puts 13 kids one by one, except for a couple who appear at the same time? And with the reptile behind every time, with the piano on the left, which is what the sequences represent, and with the number 11 that they use so much with the twins and everything when they brought down the twins. What can you say? Well, the number 11, what happened? What did my subscribers notice? I told him, well, the boy number 11 is the protagonist of the movie. Notice, he's the boy they show as number 11. Then everyone tells me, look, Enrique Calado of Schwarzenegger, huh? Right on the left, 2 flowers appear like 2 daisies, which are the number 11, and I said I missed it. And it stands out really well. They're in green and you can see the number 11 perfectly, you know? You want to see that it fits just above the boy's head, the one I called number 11, right? Everything is carefully planned. Every shot is intentional. In Hollywood, nothing appears by chance. We're talking multi-million-dollar budgets, right? So when I realized this, is what Raul says true. We're really waking ourselves up. We're doing it for ourselves. Because if I didn't have the channel, I wouldn't have reached this level of understanding about the nature of reality. Because I feed off what I learn from my subscribers and from the people I collaborate with. And in the end, it's like you say, if we nourish ourselves, boom, consciousness expands to others.
And I want to ask you, Raul, how is it possible to transmit peace? How is it possible to give a message of unity when the world is so absolutely polarized? And there are ideas that are being imposed that directly go against the entire way of life that the Source gave us. There isn't. First, you have to confront certain messages. before peace prevails,
right?
isn't peace a consequence of having won several wars?
There are several things. The first is that, let's say in the environment we're in, which is infused with the intelligence of the source, well, the source creates everything. In quantum mechanics, it's known as the lattice, a term also used by Jacobo Rinberg. The field, the matrix, call it whatever you want, it's innocent, it doesn't judge. That is the seed of emotion and thought that you plant is what that lattice, that matrix, will give back to you. It doesn't judge. If you are observing that there is war outside, it's so that you awaken from the war you have inside yourself. It makes you see aspects of yourself. That is, everything that happens outside is nothing more than a mirror that should make you ask yourself, why am I experiencing this? Why am I seeing this event and not another? You could see other events, but you're seeing these. It's not random. So that when you start to have a deep investigation within yourself, like the Christian Gospels say, right? When you enter the chamber to pray to the Father, do so silently and wholeheartedly, as the Gospel of St. John says. Well, that's where you realize that the real holy war, the so-called holy war, in Hebrew, the war of Gog and Magog, is the war between your bad inclination and your good inclination. The negative inner urge stems from the reptilian brain, from the serpent seed. The good inclination comes from our angelic higher aspect, from elevated levels of consciousness. So the soul must subdue the body. What happens to most people? For most people, their bodies completely control them, leaving their souls numb or non-existent. When they feed the soul, the first effect is that they begin to cry. I've seen it hundreds of times. When I have had, for example, in class or in private consultation, people to whom I have spoken in a certain way or shown them a certain reality, or we have meditated with Hebrew letters or analyzed any matter, elevated. The little tear is not crying like children do, it's just a little tear. By then, the soul is decoded and begins to be nourished. And that happens. Why? Thus, the highest part of the human being start to take control. The soul, starved of spiritual nourishment, begins to feed on its proper food, and the proper food is higher knowledge. That is the proper food for the soul. The Kabbalists would tell you the Hebrew letters are the food of the soul. Human beings feed on meat, apples, potatoes, but the soul feeds on Hebrew letters. And the moment you start meditating on Hebrew letters, reading the texts, understanding the nature of reality, it doesn't necessarily have to be with Hebrew letters, because we've already seen that it depends on each vessel. The resonance you will have according to your life mission will be different. That's why I say I'm not dogmatic and Kabbalah isn't for everyone. It doesn't have to be.
Reading the Gospel in the mornings really uplifts me.
Yes.
It's the nourishment for my soul.
Perfect. That which lifts your soul little by little helps you win your internal battles. You'll notice it.
Yes.
It prepares you for the day and you start your day. At some point during the day, 5 or 10 minutes of introspection, it recharges you. You reconnect with your higher self and give thanks for everything at the end of the day. Be grateful for the lessons, the people you've met, the good things the day brings, and even the bad experiences, because it helps you analyze aspects of yourself that you need to improve in some way. So actually, within the bad and the good, everything is good because everything helps you rise. If you focus correctly, of course, but your attention must always be on yourself, toward your benefit, in the sense that if I have a spiritual benefit, my spiritual benefit might influence those who interact with me. And that's wonderful. That's a precious meaning of life. It is, which is very important, man. The thing about
wars and so on, I think like you know, it leads me to that reflection that sometimes wars are really necessary, you know.
If you're in that situation, you have to act. Otherwise, no one would pick up a weapon or do anything. But if your family is in danger, that's why they always do it in the movies. This has been studied psychologically, you know? That's why, before the good guy in the movie starts killing all the bad guys, something really serious has to happen to him, so that you justify all the violence that comes after and it seems ethical to you, you understand? Why? Oh, but he killed my daughter and my wife, so I can kill 80 people in revenge, you understand? So what's going on? On one hand, we have that aspect you mentioned. There are people you can't control because they make a lot of money from war, like the arms manufacturers and so on. Some people have certain interests while others don't, so conflict will always exist. But then we look at it from another point of view. The people who lived through the wars, and you see them devastated, those who really experienced the wars. They saw their best friend's head blown off, the one they trained with, lost their entire squad, survived alone, and lost both arms or a leg. Then you see them cry and you say, wars destroy you, man. And you see the people who went through this and it destroys you. What you learn from spiritual lessons is, if you can avoid it, try not to have wars or fights if you can avoid it. Now, when it comes to a certain point, I'm with you, brother. Although there are times when it can't be avoided, and when it can't be avoided, then you'll have to learn tougher and more complex spiritual lessons. So that when the time comes, there won't be any wars, which is what I hope we can achieve. Unfortunately, we still have a long way to go. Ha ha ha.
Mr. Enrique Raul, it has been a great pleasure having you here. The truth is that after a very hard day I received several attacks. This conversation has done me good. I'm leaving more calm.
Look,
This is your home. You're always welcome. Thank you so much, brother.
whenever
If possible, especially with you, Raul, we still have another show to discuss. About the prophecies of time, the topic of Noah. There are many things we didn't get to discuss today, but it's good to leave things for later, because otherwise people might even get overwhelmed. It's important to go topic by topic and break it down thoroughly. Enrique, it's a pleasure.
To listen to you speak.
About negative primacy, if you want to say goodbye, say something to the camera first.
Nothing from me, brother. Just tell everyone things are as they are. You're doing an amazing job, brother. You're taking a huge risk with what you do. Things are the way they are, and that's what we were just talking about. Energetically, man, your fight, let's put it that way, is really exhausting. Brother, I sincerely congratulate you for all you're doing, achieving, and for your courage to speak up. Man, and to you, Raul, brother, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. You have taught me so much. You have opened up many fields for me. And you know that you have helped me not only to evolve spiritually, but also to move forward in my research on negative priming. So, brother, thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Well then, my gratitude is very deep towards both of you, to Jota, because he's doing an incredible job, and because you are, in my opinion. You may not realize it, but you're greatly increasing your listeners' awareness. And that's something that's priceless. You can't pay for it with money, so I really appreciate your commitment to raising awareness. And you, Enrique, what did you share? We've known each other for a long time now.
Time.
You already know how much I admire you. You know that, well, as soon as I discovered the material you were working with, it seemed like a real bomb to me. And I want to reiterate to the whole audience that it's a pleasure for me to be here, that I feel very comfortable, and wherever I'm allowed to speak freely and explain and share what I think is beneficial for humanity, I'll always be attentive. So thank you very much to everyone. Okay,